Mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. The influence of Roman Catholic papal bulls, 538 AD, 1798, on the Negro race and the Roman Church's role in shaping history. The papacy, through its issuance of papal bulls, wielded significant authority throughout the medieval and early modern periods, especially between 538 AD and 1798. During these centuries, the influence of the papacy profoundly shaped many global events, including the Crusades, the Inquisition, and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. The effects of papal decrees such as Dum Diversas and the doctrine of manifest destiny significantly impacted the treatment of Black people, particularly in relation to the transatlantic slave trade and colonial expansion in the Americas. Additionally, the Roman Catholic Church's supremacy as mother of all Gentile churches contributed to its central role in these events, shaping not only the spiritual life of individuals, but also the social, political, and economic structures that dictated the fate of the African diaspora. The role of papal bulls in medieval and early modern society. Papal bulls were official decrees issued by the Pope and held significant legal and religious weight. They were often used to settle theological disputes, grant pardons, and regulate church affairs, as well as influence secular matters. The period between 538 AD and 1798 saw the papacy at the height of its power, when its influence stretched across Europe and beyond. Papal bulls were instrumental in the expansion of the Catholic Church's authority over both spiritual and temporal matters. These decrees provided legitimacy for many of the Church's activities, including military campaigns such as the Crusades and the consolidation of power over political entities such as monarchies. Additionally, the Catholic Church's ability to exert its influence globally, particularly through colonization and missionary work, was facilitated by papal endorsement and directives. The Crusades and the Inquisition. The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated and sanctioned by the papacy, aimed at reclaiming Jerusalem and other holy sites from Muslim control. From the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, to the later Crusades of the 13th and 14th centuries, papal bulls played a central role in motivating European monarchs and knights to participate in these violent campaigns. The Church issued bulls to offer indulgences, promises of forgiveness for sins, to crusaders, thus tying the concept of religious duty with military action. Although the Crusades were predominantly focused on the Middle East, they had far-reaching consequences, particularly for the African continent. European colonial ambitions, fueled by papal support, extended to Africa in the centuries that followed. This colonial expansion led to the exploitation of African people through slavery and other forms of subjugation. Parallel to the Crusades was the Spanish Inquisition, established in 1478, a period marked by intense religious persecution. The Inquisition, instigated by papal bulls, sought to root out heresy within the Christian world, targeting Muslims, Jews, and other non-Catholics. The Inquisition's tactics included forced conversions, torture, and executions. It is crucial to note that many African-descended individuals were also subjected to these brutal measures, especially in Spain and Portugal, as the Catholic Church justified the subjugation of non-Christians. The slave trade and its impact on the Negro race. The papacy's influence during this era also extended to the institution of slavery. One of the most significant and controversial papal bulls, Dum Diversas, 1452, issued by Pope Nicholas V, granted the Portuguese crown the authority to enslave non-Christians, particularly in Africa. This decree laid the groundwork for the transatlantic slave trade by sanctioning the forced enslavement of African peoples under the guise of spreading Christianity. Dum Diversas served as a legal basis for the capture and enslavement of Africans, providing the papacy's official approval for the Portuguese and Spanish colonizers' exploitation of African labor. The bull also authorized the conversion of enslaved Africans to Christianity, thereby intertwining religious conversion with the brutal institution of slavery. This religious sanction made it easier for European powers to justify their actions, framing them as part of a divine mission. Another significant papal decree, Romanus Pontifex, 1455, further endorsed the Portuguese expansion into Africa, facilitating the systematic enslavement of Africans. These decrees provided European powers with the theological and legal justification needed to build and maintain the transatlantic slave trade, which devastated the African continent for centuries. The direct impact of these papal bulls on the Negro race was profound. Millions of Africans were forcibly removed from their homelands, subjected to inhumane conditions on slave ships, and sold into slavery across the Americas. The trauma and lasting effects of this system still reverberate today, contributing to racial inequalities and social injustice for Black people. The impact of Dum Diversas and Manifest Destiny on Black Jews. While the papacy's bulls primarily impacted African peoples, they also had significant consequences for the Jewish communities in Spain and Portugal. In 1492, under pressure from the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella, Jews were either forcibly converted to Christianity or expelled from Spain in what became known as the Alhambra Decree. Many Jews who fled Spain found refuge in Portugal, only to face similar pressure to convert or leave. Papal bulls, including Dum Diversas, also targeted Jews, particularly those who had converted to Christianity but were suspected of secretly practicing Judaism, known as conversos or marranos. The Inquisition's relentless pursuit of heretics extended to these converts, many of whom were forced to endure torture and persecution. The Jewish population in Spain and Portugal, including those of African descent, faced both racial and religious discrimination during this period. The papacy's decrees reinforced the notion that Jews were second-class citizens, and their treatment under both Catholic and secular authorities often mirrored the dehumanization suffered by enslaved Africans. Manifest Destiny, a belief that Europeans were divinely ordained to expand across the globe, also influenced the treatment of Black Jews and other marginalized groups. The papacy's endorsement of European colonial ambitions aligned with this doctrine, which justified the forced colonization of lands inhabited by indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans. As European nations expanded into Africa, the treatment of Jews, especially Black Jews in the Iberian Peninsula, became intertwined with colonial and racial ideologies. The Transatlantic Slave Trade and the Roman Church. The papacy's role in the Transatlantic Slave Trade cannot be understated. Papal bulls provided both the moral and legal justification for the exploitation of African peoples. These decrees enabled European colonizers to enslave millions of Africans, creating a system of racialized slavery that spanned centuries. The Roman Catholic Church's involvement in the slave trade was multifaceted. While some clergy members and church leaders spoke out against the inhumanity of slavery, the Church as an institution often sided with colonial powers, endorsing the practice in various forms. Missionary activities were sometimes used to mask the more exploitative aspects of colonialism, as the conversion of enslaved Africans to Christianity was framed as a noble endeavor. However, many of these conversions were coerced, and the slave trade's horrific impact on African culture and society was immense. The legacy of the transatlantic slave trade is still felt today, particularly in the Americas. While the Catholic Church's position on slavery evolved over time, Its early endorsement of the practice set the stage for centuries of racial inequality and oppression. Moreover, the Vatican's failure to unequivocally condemn slavery during the height of the Transatlantic Slave Trade has been a point of contention for critics of the Church's historical actions. Scherf, the Roman Catholic Church as the mother of all Gentile churches. The phrase "mother of all Gentile churches" refers to the central role of the Roman Catholic Church in shaping Christianity outside the Jewish community. During the early centuries of the Church, it became the dominant force in spreading Christianity throughout Europe and, later, the world. The papacy's influence extended to all aspects of life in Europe, and it was instrumental in shaping the theological, political, and social frameworks that defined the Western world. The Church's authority was often intertwined with the political power of monarchs and empires. The papacy's endorsement of colonial expansion and missionary work gave European powers the moral and religious justification to conquer lands and enslave indigenous peoples and Africans. The notion of the Church as the mother of all Gentile churches highlights its supremacy in the Christian world, where it dictated the terms of religious practice, governance, and social structures. Conclusion. The influence of Roman Catholic papal bulls between 538 AD and 1798 had profound and lasting effects on the world, particularly in relation to the Negro race. The papacy's endorsement of the Crusades, the Inquisition, and the Transatlantic Slave Trade provided the legal and religious justification for the exploitation of African peoples. Papal decrees such as Dum Diversas played a central role in facilitating the dehumanization and enslavement of millions of Africans, while also contributing to the persecution of Jewish communities in Spain and Portugal. The Roman Catholic Church's role as the mother of all Gentile churches solidified its influence on global history, shaping both religious and secular systems that continue to affect the world today. The legacy of these papal decrees and their impact on the Black diaspora remains a critical issue in the ongoing conversation about racial justice, colonialism, and the Church's role in history. Understanding the Church's role in these events is essential for addressing the historical injustices that continue to affect the descendants of those who suffered under the weight of papal authority. Daniel 7:1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. 2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. 3. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. 6. After this I beheld, and lo another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. 9 I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. 10. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. 11 I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. 12. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. 13 I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion, and glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. 16 I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. 17. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. 18. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. 21 I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. 22. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand, until a time and times, and the dividing of time. 26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. 27. And the kingdom and dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. 28. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Baruch Sheni, to Baruch. 39, 1-8. And he answered and said unto me, Baruch, this is the interpretation of the vision which you have seen. As you have seen the great forest which lofty and rugged mountains surrounded, this is the word. Behold, the days come, and this kingdom will be destroyed, which once destroyed Sion, and it will be subjected to that which comes after it. Moreover, that also again after a time will be destroyed, and another, a third, will arise, and that also will have dominion for its time, and will be destroyed. And after these things a fourth kingdom will arise, whose power will be harsh and evil, far beyond those which were before it. And it will rule many times as the forests on the plain, and it will hold fast for times, and will exalt itself more than the cedars of Lebanon. And by it the truth will be hidden, and all those who are polluted with iniquity will flee to it, as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. And it will come to pass, when the time of its consummation that it should fall has approached, then the principate of my Mashiach will be revealed, which is like the fountain and the vine. And when it is revealed, it will root out the multitude of its host. And as touching that which you have seen, the lofty cedar, which was left of that forest, and the fact that the vine spoke those words with it, which you did hear, this is the word. Revelation 13, 1-10. King James Version 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. The 10 horns in the biblical passages of Daniel 7 and Revelation 13 are symbolic representations that are pivotal to understanding the prophetic imagery presented in the Bible regarding the end times. These passages are often interpreted in various theological and historical contexts, with a particular focus on the rise and fall of various kingdoms and powers in the history of Europe. The horns are symbolic of nations or kingdoms that arose after the fall of the Roman Empire, which is a key theme in both Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts and John's vision in Revelation. This essay will explore the 10 horns mentioned in both Daniel 7 and Revelation 13, focusing on their historical connection to certain nations, many of which arose from the fragmented Roman Empire. The nations that will be discussed include the Visigoths, Spain, Anglo-Saxons, England, Franks, France, Alemanni, Germany, Burgundians, Switzerland, Lombards, Italy, Suevi, Portugal, and the 3 kingdoms that were uprooted, the Heruli, Ostrogoths, and Vandals. The 10 horns in Daniel 7. In Daniel 7, the prophet Daniel has a vision of 4 beasts that represent 4 kingdoms or empires. The 4th beast is particularly noteworthy because it is described as having 10 horns, which symbolize 10 kings or kingdoms that arise from this empire. The vision describes the 4th beast as particularly fierce, with the 10 horns symbolizing the 10 kingdoms or powers that will arise after the fall of the Roman Empire. This imagery is crucial for understanding the geopolitical shifts that would occur in Europe after the fall of Rome. Daniel's vision also highlights a small horn that uproots 3 others, indicating the rise of a power that will dominate and overcome 3 of these 10 kingdoms. Thus, the 10 horns in Revelation 13. In Revelation 13, John has a vision of a beast that mirrors the imagery of the 4th beast in Daniel 7, with 7 heads and 10 horns. This beast represents a future kingdom that will have dominion over much of the earth, and the 10 horns again symbolize 10 kings or kingdoms. The connection between Daniel and Revelation is clear. Both visions are prophesying the rise of powers that emerge from the remnants of the Roman Empire and their eventual role in the end times. The 10 horns in Revelation are seen as symbolizing the same 10 kingdoms or nations that arose after Rome's fall, and they represent the power structures that will play a significant role in shaping the world during the final days. Connecting the 10 horns to specific nations, the nations listed: Visigoths, Anglo-Saxons, Franks, Alemanni, Burgundians, Lombards, Suevi, Heruli, Ostrogoths, and Vandals, are historically associated with the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and the subsequent rise of new powers in Europe. These powers are often seen as fulfilling the symbolic role of the 10 horns. Here's a breakdown of how these nations connect to the 10 horns. 1. Visigoths, Spain. The Visigoths were one of the Germanic tribes that played a key role in the downfall of the Western Roman Empire. In 410 AD, they famously sacked Rome under King Alaric. They later established a kingdom in Spain, which lasted until the Muslim conquest in the early 8th century. In the prophetic imagery of the 10 horns, the Visigoths are often considered one of the 10 kingdoms that arose from the collapse of Rome. 2nd, Anglo-Saxons, England. The Anglo-Saxons were a group of tribes that migrated to Britain following the collapse of Roman rule in the 5th century. They established several kingdoms that would later unite to form England. The Anglo-Saxons represent another of the 10 horns, as their kingdom was one of the major powers that arose from the fall of Rome in the West. 3rd, Franks, France. The Franks were one of the most powerful and enduring barbarian groups to emerge after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Under leaders like Clovis, the Franks established a kingdom in Gaul, which later became France. The Franks played a significant role in the history of Europe, and they are commonly associated with one of the 10 horns in biblical prophecy. 4th, Alemanni, Germany. The Alemanni were a confederation of Germanic tribes that settled in what is now southwestern Germany and parts of France and Switzerland. They were known for their resistance against Roman expansion and were eventually absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire. The Alemanni are often considered one of the 10 horns in prophetic interpretations. 5th, Burgundians, Switzerland. The Burgundians were another Germanic tribe that established a kingdom in what is now modern-day France and Switzerland. After being defeated by the Franks, the Burgundians were absorbed into the Frankish kingdom, but they remain an important part of the post-Roman political landscape. They are often considered another of the 10 horns. 6th, Lombards, Italy. The Lombards were a Germanic tribe that invaded Italy in the 6th century and established their own kingdom. The Lombard kingdom in Italy played a significant role in shaping the history of medieval Europe. The Lombards are frequently identified as one of the 10 horns in biblical prophecy. 7. Suevi, Portugal. The Suevi were a Germanic tribe that established a kingdom in what is now modern-day Portugal and parts of Spain. Their kingdom was eventually absorbed into the Visigothic kingdom, but the Suevi are often associated with one of the 10 horns due to their role in the post-Roman European landscape. 8. Heruli, Italy, rooted up. The Heruli were a Germanic tribe that briefly controlled parts of Italy after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. However, Their kingdom was uprooted by the Ostrogoths in the 5th century. The Heruli's downfall is significant in biblical prophecy, as they are often viewed as one of the kingdoms that was rooted up by the rise of another power. 9th. Ostrogoths, rooted up. The Ostrogoths were another Germanic tribe that established a kingdom in Italy after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Their kingdom was eventually overthrown by the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century. The Ostrogoths are often seen as one of the 10 horns that was uprooted in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. 10th. Vandals, rooted up. The Vandals were a Germanic tribe that famously sacked Rome in 455 AD and established a kingdom in North Africa. However, their kingdom was destroyed by the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century. Like the Heruli and Ostrogoths, the Vandals are considered one of the kingdoms that was uprooted in the prophetic vision. Conclusion. The 10 horns in Daniel 7 and Revelation 13 serve as symbolic representations of the kingdoms or powers that arose after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The nations listed: Visigoths, Anglo-Saxons, Franks, Alemanni, Burgundians, Lombards, Suevi, Heruli, Ostrogoths, and Vandals, each played a significant role in the shaping of Europe during the early medieval period. Some of these kingdoms, like the Heruli, Ostrogoths, and Vandals, were uprooted and absorbed by other powers, while others, like the Franks and Anglo-Saxons, went on to become enduring powers in European history. The prophetic imagery of the 10 horns connects these historical nations to the larger biblical narrative of the rise and fall of powers, particularly in relation to the Roman Empire's collapse and the establishment of new kingdoms in Europe. The 10 horns, therefore, are more than just symbolic. They represent a key turning point in history and the ongoing influence of these powers in the biblical understanding of the end times. Revelation 17, 1-18:1. And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. 11. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. 13. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. 14. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and chosen, and faithful. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. 17. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Revelation 18:1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. 2. And he cried mightily, with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. 3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. 5. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. 6. Reward her, even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. The Roman Catholic Church is the harlot that sits upon the Gentile European beast nations. Jeremiah 51, 6-9. 6. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. 7. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. 8. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her. Take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. 9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. The Arabic Islamic slave trade and the Transatlantic Slave Trade are 2 of the most significant and devastating slave systems in human history. Both have left a profound impact on the African continent and the global African diaspora. Though distinct in their methods and geographic scope, both these systems exploited millions of Africans, leaving deep scars on the black race that continue to be felt today. The effects of these slave trades on the black race can be examined from multiple perspectives, including cultural, social, economic, and psychological impacts, as well as the long-lasting legacy of inequality and injustice. The Arabic Islamic slave trade, which began in the 7th century and continued for over 1,000 years, primarily took place across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe and Asia. This system of slavery was unique in that it involved the forced transportation of men, women, and children from sub-Saharan Africa to Islamic-controlled regions. It is estimated that between 10 to 18 million Africans were enslaved over the course of this trade. The nature of the Arabic slave trade was somewhat different from the transatlantic slave trade. While a large number of enslaved Africans were used in agricultural labor, many others were employed as soldiers, concubines, or administrators in the Islamic world. As a result, the impact on the black race was complex, affecting not just African societies, but also Islamic cultures, where enslaved individuals sometimes attained positions of power and influence. However, despite these occasional opportunities, the fundamental impact of the Arabic-Islamic slave trade on the black race was one of dehumanization and displacement. Africans were subjected to extreme physical abuse, cultural erasure, and systematic exploitation. Moreover, the trade fractured African communities as millions were torn from their homes, often to never return. This sense of displacement carried over into the broader black identity, leading to a long-term psychological trauma for those enslaved, as well as for their descendants. On the other hand, the transatlantic slave trade, which spanned from the 16th to the 19th centuries, had an even more devastating effect on the black race. An estimated 12 million Africans were forcibly taken across the Atlantic, primarily to the Americas, where they were subjected to brutal labor on plantations, in mines, and in other industries. Unlike the Arabic-Islamic slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade focused largely on agricultural labor, with black Africans being exploited for the production of crops such as sugar, cotton, and tobacco, which were integral to European economies. The transatlantic slave trade had severe social and economic consequences for both Africans and their descendants. The brutal conditions of slavery, including physical violence, family separation, and cultural disintegration, left a profound mark on the psyche of black people. In the Americas, enslaved Africans and their descendants faced institutionalized racism, segregation, and exclusion from societal privileges. Over generations, this entrenched inequality created systems of racial hierarchy and oppression that persist in the form of structural racism, poverty, and disenfranchisement for many black communities today. Culturally, the transatlantic slave trade also resulted in the loss of African heritage, language, and customs. Africans in the Americas were often stripped of their cultural identities, forced to adopt European languages, religions, and customs, leading to a loss of ancestral traditions. Despite this, enslaved Africans managed to create new cultural forms that blended African, European, and indigenous influences, contributing to the rich cultural heritage of the African diaspora. In conclusion, both the Arabic-Islamic slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade had enduring and far-reaching effects on the black race. These systems of exploitation left deep scars on African societies and created lasting legacies of racial inequality, cultural displacement, and psychological trauma. While the slave trades have long since ended, the consequences of these historical atrocities continue to affect the black race today, highlighting the need for ongoing efforts to address the long-term effects of slavery and fight racial injustice across the globe.